Welcome back, folks. This is Shane. In today's video, we're checking out the love-hate relationship I have with the Panasonic 20mm f1.7 Prime. Now, before we get started, I paid for this lens myself. This video is not sponsored or anything like that, so if it is useful or helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that. Just to start with a little bit of background on the 20mm f1.7 Prime, it was released in September of 2009. So it's one of the first prime lenses or pancake lenses for the Micro Four Thirds system. Now this was the first of two editions of this lenses. The second one came out in 2013. The only major difference between both of their build quality is the new one has more of a metal feel and body. So if you're looking for one of these and you want to save a few bucks, there's no difference in terms of optical quality or video performance. Now let's cover some of the build quality aspects about the pancake lens. So this 20mm f1.7 is a little bit deceptive. I love the tension on the focus ring. The only problem with the focus ring is the fact you have to turn it about 6 times to get from one end to the other. So if you're pulling focus from the distance all the way to the subject up close, you got to sit there and turn it and turn it and turn it. This is definitely one of the biggest drawbacks of the Panasonic 20mm f1.7 is trying to focus on a subject up close and then one in the distance. You'll be turning the lens perpetually, it feels like, to get it to go anywhere. So if you're in a hurry, you're out of luck. Now, of course, you can use the manual touch to focus option on the camera, but the way that it moves, especially on this particular lens, isn't very pleasing to the eye. When it comes to the focus ring and body design, it's mostly plastic, and that's not uncommon when it comes to these type of lenses. I've seen articles and people online comment about this lens, calling it the perfect normal lens. It's far from perfect, but the field of view is awesome. It's about the equivalent of a 40mm f3.4 and a full frame sensor camera. So if that's what you're looking for, this will be the perfect lens for that particular situation. So I'm going to talk about some of the positives before I get into some of the negatives, because I really feel like what makes this lens special is either static shots like this, where you never need autofocus, or any time where you don't have to pull focus. If you've got something in focus, for example, and you're moving around, it looks absolutely beautiful. One of the things I love about Micro Four Thirds is you can get nice and close to your subject to blow the background out of focus. And I'll show you some samples of that now. The minimum focusing distance on this lens is 0.2 meters. So if you're into getting nice creamy backgrounds, this is definitely a really great choice. When it comes to the straight up picture quality you get out of the 20mm f1.7, it looks really, really beautiful. And it's right at that sweet spot with Micro Four Thirds where the backgrounds go out of focus beautifully. You'll actually get more background blur than with the 15mm f1.7, which is arguably one of my favorite lenses of all time. I'm using one right now. But you won't get as much as the 25mm f1.7. So if that's important to you, go for the 25. I would recommend either one of these two lenses over the 20mm anyway, and I'll get into that in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about low light performance. So if you're looking for a lens that will do well in lower light conditions and you have a GH5 or G85, it will be really solid. If you've got a GH5S, you'll get even better low light performance. So if this focal range is important to you, you'll get some pretty solid results. In this test footage I'm showing you now, it was actually far darker than it may appear on camera. We're underneath some trees, it was at the tail end of the day, and it was quite dark. So the results, I think, speak for themselves. The contrast looks beautiful, the colors look beautiful, everything about the picture quality straight out of camera looks great. So what are the downsides? Now, I already know there's a huge fan base for this 20mm f1.7. It has a bit of a cult following. And again, I think the video quality is spectacular, but I have some criticisms about it from my own personal experience shooting content now for a number of years, that it just doesn't work for my particular situation and for the way that I hope to use it. So I want to share that with you now. If it works for your particular situation, have at it. You can get some great results. The first thing I don't like about this lens is you can't use continuous video autofocus whatsoever. Panasonic isn't known for their autofocus, but I have a phase detection camera right here. This is the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, and that lens just didn't work at all on this camera for video, which is unheard of. All of my other ones work perfectly. This is as good as Sony with the 1.4 on here. It just works beautifully, and if you missed that video, I'll link it up in the cards and you can check it out. So even with a phase detection camera, the lens is useless when it comes to video autofocus. So I know a lot of people don't use autofocus, but it's definitely worth mentioning. The second thing about the autofocus that isn't very good, there's a lot of lens breathing, even more so than on the 25mm f1.7. There's a lot of pull. So if you don't know what breathing is on a lens, it's essentially when you focus, you'll see it almost look like it's zooming. You'll see the corners move back and forth, and I'll show you some examples of that now. I've heard a lot of people critique the motor noise when it comes to the Panasonic 20mm f1.7, and I have to tell you, it's not a problem. It's slightly noisier than all of my other lenses, but it's nothing that you'll hear on a recording. If you've got a shotgun microphone and you're vlogging or something like that on your camera, you're not even going to hear it over whatever else is going on in the room. If you're just using the onboard microphones, maybe that's when you'll hear it, but I wouldn't trust autofocus at all with this lens. I would either be using manual focus and turning the ring, or I'd just be doing touch to focus and then letting it be. So who is this lens for and who should avoid it completely? Now, if it wasn't blatantly obvious, someone who's doing a seated shot like this will get an absolute kick out of the 20mm f1.7. I used it in my other studio room on my guitar channel and the picture quality looked beautiful. The only downside was I couldn't get further back and then set the camera on autofocus because it just struggled, it pulsed, it went blurry, it had all kinds of problems. So if you're doing a seated or static shot like this, or you're doing a shot on a gimbal like I was outside in the park where you don't have to continually adjust the focus, you can kind of follow your subject, it's going to give you great results and it's super small. This is also a great lens for photographers. I took some photos with this lens and it did a pretty decent job. It just isn't as responsive and snappy as any of my other lenses, especially on the Olympus, which shocked me. That is usually like the picture king when it comes to my lineup of cameras, but it just felt a little bit sluggish compared to everything else I owned. If you're deciding whether or not the 20mm f1.7 is great for vlogging, I would probably say give it a miss. You're going to need a selfie stick depending on how tall you are to get it framed properly. And then you're going to have to touch to focus. It's going to be pretty much a nightmare. At least with the 15mm f1.7, you get a wider field of view, and you can also just use autofocus on one area mode. Set the box up and you shouldn't have any issues. Tested this with the GH5, GH5S, and the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II without any issues. So go for the 15 if you're a vlogger. At the end of the day, should you buy this lens? Now, if you can get it for an absolute bargain and you only are doing locked off video shots like this, or shots where you're not going to be really required to focus heavily, it's a great choice given that it's inexpensive, you get great picture quality, and you can blur the backgrounds out beautifully. Any other situation, I would say stay away for it, especially for video. Now, if you're a photographer, you'll probably like it, but it just won't feel as responsive as other lenses, especially the ones in my lineup. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be doing any type of focus pulling, it's really awkward to get to it because it's such a small lens. You got to get in there and turn it around, and it just wasn't very comfortable whatsoever. So yeah, image quality, beautiful, build quality, okay, focus, terrible, focus ring, terrible. That's kind of my review. I think there's a lot of positives in there, but there's also a lot of negatives. Again, if you're going to be buying a prime lens, get the 25mm f1.7 if that works for you, or get the 15mm f1.7. I really feel this is the best lens for the Panasonic lineup. I love the 12mm f1.4, but this is a real specialty lens when it comes to the primes. This little Panasonic is hard to beat, and it's much more pleasurable to use when it comes to manual focus. You also get an aperture ring on there as well, so you can, select which aperture you want from the lens itself. So yeah, that's my thoughts about the 20mm f1.7. Great picture quality, terrible user experience. Thanks for watching.